Oilers forward Zack KAssian has completed his hearing in the NHL Department of Player Safety has handed down his suspension. We'll discuss the suspension and give you my thoughts coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as most of you are probably aware by now, there was an incident in last night's game between the Edmonton Oilers and the Tampa Bay Lightning where we saw Oilers forward Zack KAssian kick defenseman Kassian Cernak of the Tampa Bay Lightning with his skate blade as they were tangled up on the ice. Now, clearly this is a kicking motion that the NHL does not want to see. It's a very dangerous play given the fact of how sharp those skate blades are, and it doesn't matter what kind of force or anything was done. It's something that will always lead to supplementary discipline. Now, we've seen a few other cases in the past of players kicking other players with their skates and having suspensions handed out. Now, the Department of Player Safety has given Kassian a 7-game suspension. Now, as we discussed earlier today in a prior video, he was offered an in-person hearing, which gives the NHL the option of suspending 6 or more games. Of course, he decided to waive that right and decided to do it by phone, which is why we have the ruling so quickly. If they would have had to do an in-person hearing, probably would have been at least one more day before we would have heard back and get a ruling here from the Department of Player Safety. But they cited a couple of different things. During Zack KAssian's testimony to defend himself, he did admit that he did it on purpose, but he was defending himself by saying that he wasn't kicking with very much force. But as George Perro said in the NHL Player Safety video, it doesn't really matter how much force was used. The fact was you were doing a reckless play, you're kicking a player with a skate blade, and you'll always be disciplined extra for that. So that's clearly not something the NHL is willing to tolerate. And the reason it's so many games as well is Zack KAssian has a history here. He's been suspended 4 times, and it's the second time in a short stint. It was just 8 games back that he was previously suspended, of course, for a very different incident, but still, either way, KAssian has a lot of history, and a 7-game suspension is what they've decided to hand down here. Of course, the Oilers are already shorthanded without Connor McDavid for a few weeks, so this is going to hurt. KAssian has proven to be a very effective player for them in big stretches this year. Just got himself a new contract extension, so clearly, like I said, this is going to be a big blow for the Oilers in their forward group here as they battle for a playoff spot and try to remain in playoff contention. But Zack KAssian has a history here, not only in the NHL, even going back to his junior days. He had a lot of suspensions, a lot of history of being reckless and somewhat violent at times. So clearly, he has not really learned his lesson here, and this is something that he's going to have to get in check. You can play physical, you can play on the edge, but things like this are not going to be tolerated in the NHL. So of course, as always, if you haven't seen the video as well from Player Safety, I will put a link to it down in the description and the pinned comment so you can watch the play if you haven't seen it. Here are the comments from Player Safety, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are on suspension here for KAssian. Do you think 7 games is fair? Is it too much? Let me know your thoughts so we can discuss further in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.